What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thanks for checking us out. My name is GemmaJade, but today we are going to be talking about bizarre deaths preceded by strange behavior. And so often when we talk about people who seemingly vanish into thin air, we also talk about how unusual and bizarre the situation itself is. It seems as though strange disappearances and bizarre behavior almost go hand in hand, not to mention mysterious deaths as well. I've been coming across so many cases lately that have some sort of bizarre clue or weird circumstance surrounding disappearances. And sometimes it happens that there are people who vanish off the face of the earth or who have died under baffling circumstances. But in others, there's this weird, uncharacteristic, and perplexing behavior and actions that lead up to the disappearances and deaths. In the cases we're going to cover today, it's as though those things are just as, if not more so, every bit as odd and puzzling as the crimes they're linked to. We've seen cases like Trevor Dealey and Asha Kramer, just to name a few of the more than 24 we've already discussed here throughout the years, and I always try and figure out what kind of clues the strange and inexplicable behaviors and insanely bizarre clues could offer us by way of figuring out what happened at the end of the day, breaking it down to its most basic set of facts and logic, and then seeing where we can go from there to see what happened. But sometimes that's impossible. I put together today just two of some of the most head-scratchingly enigmatic deaths that are all but orbited by peculiar clues and out-of-character behavior by the victim or victims. With nothing more to say, let's jump right in. Most of you are more than likely familiar with our first case, but it's not something we've ever discussed here on my channel, and so I thought it'd be an interesting case to start with. This one is very well known and has to do with one of my most favoritist old-timey authors, and the first person whose books I ever read that let me know deep down inside that I wanted to write and be an author for a living. I'm speaking, of course, about the mysterious circumstances and odd behavior surrounding the death of the late, great Edgar Allan Poe. It all started on September 27, 1849, when Edgar departed by train from Richmond, Virginia, heading to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He had an editing business at that time and was scheduled to edit a collection of poems by a well-known poet of that time period. However, he never made it to his destination, and it seemed as though he'd vanished off the face of the earth. That is, until he was found almost a week later in Baltimore, Maryland, of all places. That was an odd place for him to be because it wasn't on his itinerary, and as far as anyone knew, he'd had no business there at that time. October 3rd, 1849 was Election Day, and despite the pouring rain and the chill in the air, the turnout was more than decent at one of the places where people were casting their votes in the area, Gunner Hall in Baltimore. One of the writers for the Baltimore Sun newspaper, a man named Joseph W. Walker, was there and found himself walking past a man lying in a gutter, nearly unconscious, dressed in worn-out and dingy clothing and babbling incoherently about something or other. By now the word was out, or apparently at least in the writing circles of the day, that Edgar Allan Poe was missing, but at first Walker didn't even recognize that that's who he was looking at. He thought to himself that he better be wary about approaching this probably drunk, vagrant bum on the side of the road, but approach he did, and that's when it hit him who he was really dealing with. Edgar was obviously going through something in serious disarray and shambles, and Joseph Walker was shocked when the realization that this was Edgar Allan Poe finally hit him. It was obvious that the well-known, not yet famous author was wearing clothes that were not his own. They were shabby and ill-fitting, far too large for the not-so-large Poe. Poe was confused and seemingly delirious, rambling incoherently still, and when asked what he was doing there, he replied that he was waiting for a magazine editor named Joseph E. Snodgrass. Poe insisted he did not need medical attention because Snodgrass, quote, had the medical training to know what to do, end quote. No one by that name ever showed up, and after a little while, Walker got Poe to a doctor named John Moran. No one, including the doctor himself, had been able to glean any information from Poe about where he'd been, where he'd acquired the soiled and too large clothes, or what happened to him since the day he disappeared. Unfortunately, this was because whatever was happening with Poe, he was besieged by bizarre hallucinations and in a state of total and complete delirium. The doctor also couldn't for his life figure out what was wrong with him, and when Poe died 4 days later, he would mysteriously continuously yell out the name Reynolds. That identity has still never been uncovered. Although his official cause of death would eventually be named as swelling of the brain, that says nothing about the disappearance and where he had been for that almost an entire week, not to mention how he ended up where he did in the condition he was found in. Many theories have of course popped up throughout the years, but at the end of the day, his death and disappearance, as well as the bizarre behavior leading up to it, remain just as enigmatic and mysterious as any of his own dark fiction tales most of us love so much and know so well. One theory includes that he was robbed in order for someone to steal not just his money, but his identity as well, in order to possibly commit fraud. Another theory in the same vein is that he was mugged so someone could steal his identity with the specific purpose of committing voter fraud, or that he was, for whatever reason, targeted for outright murder. In this theory, his nonsensical ramblings and delirious state would be attributed to whatever injuries he suffered from the presumed severe beating he'd received. Edgar Allan Poe was also famously known at the time for his complete inability to handle any alcohol at all. His body literally had zero tolerance for any of it, which surprised me with him being born on January 19th and on the cusp of Aquarius and Capricorn, but they say that maybe he just drank too much and that's how he ended up in the state he was eventually found in. Too much for him was literally anything, as it was said and well known to everyone who knew him that a single glass of alcohol was too much. Essentially, in this theory, he drank himself to death. However, that still doesn't explain why he went missing for 5 days, where he was, and why he was so incredibly incoherent for at least 5 entire days preceding his death. After all, from the time he was found lying in a gutter on the side of the road until he died, he was delusional at best. Alcohol doesn't last that long in anyone's system, no matter how much someone drinks in one night, or even 2. Also, this theory goes out the window once you realize that the autopsy showed he had no drugs and no alcohol at all in his system at the time of his death. Some other theories that don't explain everything going on and that have nothing to back them up by way of evidence, but that people tend to latch onto as reasons he died, are that he contracted rabies somehow, random, that he had incurred mercury poisoning, that he had encephalitis or meningitis, but none of these actually seem to be the case, and the mystery remains. One other thing I would really like to know, but will never get an answer to, is who was Joseph Snodgrass and who was Reynolds, and what in the world did they have to do with any of this, if they even existed? Let's go back to 1929 for our next case and talk about another author, this one also an occultist by the name of Neta Fornerio. Neta was a member of an offshoot of the occult movement, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, called the Alpha et Omega Temple. She was labeled as odd by most people who knew her, not only for her interest in and practice of the occult, but for her extreme interest in the Fae and healing magic. But in the days leading up to her mysterious death, she would become even more strange, according to those who knew her, and that's really saying something. Sometime in the summer of 1929, Neta left her home in London suddenly and without a word to anyone, and she headed to a small, quiet island in Scotland called Iona, and there she stayed at a lodge owned by a woman local to the area named Mrs. McRae. It seems as though Neta had planned on staying on the island for a long while because she had packed most of her belongings with her. But the fact is, no one knew why she'd gone there in the first place, and most people she knew didn't even know she'd left in the first place. Once she got there, Neta started to behave very strangely, even for her. She wandered aimlessly around the island during the day to, according to her, contact the spirits she believed were living or stuck there. During the night, she would go into very deep trances, and when she emerged from those, she would tell people she'd made contact with the spirit world and had received many messages from it. As the days wore on, she repeatedly told Mrs. McRae all about it, and as more time passed, her ramblings began to really spook the older woman. Mrs. McRae would later say that at one point the silver necklace Neta had always worn, she never took it off, had suddenly turned black for seemingly no reason at all and with no explanation for how it had done so. It was just silver one moment, and when Neta came out of her trance and exited the spirit world, it was black. All of this went on until the autumn of that year, and that's when Neta sent a strange and cryptic message to her housekeeper in London. She told the housekeeper that she had, quote, a terrible case of healing, end quote, that she felt she needed to perform, and that she would be gone for longer than she initially expected to be. However, on November 17th, Mrs. McRae said she flew into a panic state of frenzy, completely unprovoked, and started quickly packing her things to leave the island and return home. When the lodge owner asked her what was wrong, she responded that she was under severe telepathic assault and that she had to return to London at once. Mrs. McRae told Neta that unfortunately there were no buses running that day from the island to the mainland, and at this, Neta ran into her room, slammed the door shut behind her, and was seemingly distraught. She'd also become enraged. Oddly enough, or maybe not, Neta came out of the room a short time later completely calm and said she'd actually decided to stay on the island after all and that she was going to go on one of her walks. She never returned back to the lodge and no one would ever see her alive again. Later on in the evening, when the time she usually returned came and went and there had been no word from her, Mrs. McRae became very concerned. It was becoming very cold outside and Neta had never stayed out that late. She couldn't help but remember Neta's state of mind earlier in the day. She was worried. The next day, Neta was reported as missing and a search was launched, and despite how small the island was, it took 2 days for anyone to be able to find her. Near Loch Steonag, there she lay dead, near what the locals called, quote, a fairy mound, end quote. That always blows my mind, this part of the story. The state of her body and the crime scene itself were very strange, to say the least. It seemed as though an ornamental knife had been used to carve a cross into the ground, and the weapon was lying nearby to Neta's body. Neta's body was sprawled out on top of the very large cross, and she was wearing nothing but a thin black cloak. Her body was covered with scratches all over it, and the soles of her feet were, which were bare, bloody and raw. It looked like she'd been frantically running over the rough and rugged ground out there. Possibly, some thought, trying to escape something or someone. Though the body was examined further and much more thoroughly, no further evidence was ever gained as to what happened to Neta. The coroner was not able to tell how she died and just assumed and then settled on the explanation that she died of hypothermia. This was ascertained merely by the fact that it was extremely cold while she was missing and she'd only been wearing that extremely thin cloak. Despite this, fellow members of the occult she'd been a member of insisted that Neta had died due to severe and evil psychic attack. Do you guys remember the case of Christopher Case? I've covered it twice here on this channel and I've discussed it in at least 2 of my books, but it's the same thing. Only in Chris's case, there was much more evidence. The island we're talking about here is extremely small and everyone who lives there knows everyone else. Well, no one there was found to have been a suspect in Neta's death in any way, and anyway, how could you prove death by psychic attack? There's a little bit more on this case, but it's all mainly about the weird experiences people have had on the island, and none of it leads us any closer to understanding what's happened to Neta. I personally do believe she was under psychic attack, but I don't believe it was a person. I believe maybe it was more like a spiritual attack because she's going into trances and she's, first of all, she's an occultist, right? So she's going into these trances not unprotected, more than likely, and bringing things out with her, maybe even not even being aware of what she's bringing out with her. And I do believe it could have gotten her killed, especially her being on the cross. That stuck with me. It's like niggling at my head, like, why put yourself on a giant cross? I do not think she took her own life. I plan on doing a part 2 of this, meaning strange behavior that precedes people mysteriously vanishing or dying. It's so interesting to me, and these 2 cases are only the beginning in a long string of things like this happening to people. And it isn't just authors and or occultists either. Many of them are just ordinary people finding themselves in extraordinary circumstances. Think again, Trevor Dealey, Asha Krimer. I hope you all enjoy this topic as much as I do because I plan on covering it again really soon. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed spending this time with me. Spread the love by sharing this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and please make sure your notification bell is turned on and click to all so you get notified of everything I do. I know I've changed some things lately. There's no more Oracle live streams. You can still get them personally from me. Nothing else has changed. Except I'm a little more vocal about other things in my YouTube shorts now. This is still a paranormal channel. We're still going to discuss the paranormal in Friday night's live stream. So I hope y'all are sticking with me because the views have been very low since I removed Oracle from the equation and started just doing TikToks and YouTube shorts about what I feel is important and trying to be funny about certain things. Don't get offended, guys. It's only YouTube. It's really not that serious. And I love and adore all of you no matter what your beliefs are. It depends to me on how you treat me. So I just want to put that out there. Guys, don't forget the description box for important links, ways to donate to the channel. That is so important. PayPal, Cash App, my Amazon wish list gift link. Also, 10% off site-wide at w.com with my code GEMSTONES. I've done several shorts, TikToks, and ads for Dubby. They are an amazing sponsor. You guys know, most of you do, I don't work with any other sponsors. I am looking into a few more, but I really don't work with sponsors because I really have to believe in the project. So the fact that I'm standing with Dubby and being sponsored by them and supporting them and putting their product out there has got to mean something to those of y'all who know me and who have known me all these years. I've had 1 or 2 other sponsors and they didn't last that long because I just didn't believe in the product. So please go click on the link. It'll be the pinned comment as well. I am sorry for losing audio at the last 6 minutes or so of the video last week. I don't know what happened there. It's been happening every once in a while. I've got to figure it out with the editor, but at least y'all caught the whole story. You just missed this part of it. Also in the description box, you will find my email, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. Please email me for autographed copies of my book, for any and all correspondence, to send in your own encounters with the supernatural, paranormal, extraterrestrial, and otherworldly. You will find links for the Kindle paperback and Audible version of all 14 of my books. You can go to Amazon and type in Gemma Jade Books. If there's a book you're looking for, it'll probably be easier to go and find my collection. That way, I'm working on book number 15, Encounters with Extraterrestrials and Otherworldly Entities. I don't know if that's going to be the title. I got to tweak it a little bit, but I'm hoping to have that released by Halloween. So buying my books, linking up with Dubby, getting that 10% off site-wide discount, donating through PayPal and Cash App, sending me a gift through Amazon. All of these things are ways to support me. Another really amazing way you can support me, and this doesn't cost anything, is to go over to TikTok and support me over there. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, but I'm not monetized on those sites. TikTok, I am rapidly gaining the 10K followers that I need in order to be monetized. So if you want to help me out, go over to TikTok and follow me, GemmaJadeYT. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook, but again, that's kind of like the content from YouTube and TikTok. I just repost to those two sites, and I'm really not monetized on Facebook or Instagram yet. It costs money on Instagram and Facebook. I don't know. I guess I just don't know how to work it yet, but I guess I should probably look into that. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you, because you deserve it. If nobody told you today, you are amazing. You got this. Just be yourself. Let your true, authentic light shine out into the world, and you will attract everything good for you and meant for you. And I absolutely believe in you. I got your back. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.